Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at the week starting on Monday, August the 18th, 2025. It is going to be a very short video. I'm going to start by doing a preview of the main events taking place astrologically over the course of a week. And then I'm going to look at the I Ching. I'm going to do an I Ching reading for this week. And I'll be looking at various aspects of life. To be more specific, I'll have 4 sections in my reading. A general section, then money, then career and business, and finally relationships. And that's it. So let's start by looking at this week. And here is a chart for the beginning of a week, set for midnight New York time on the 18th of August. And don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So turning to this chart, the week begins with the usual Mercury sextile Mars. So Mercury has been sextile Mars for sort of ages, well, not ages, but sort of for the last week or so, or perhaps longer. And it's because Mercury and Mars are moving at the moment at approximately the same speed. And we've had several Mercury sextile Mars, exact aspects, but now Mercury is catching up with Mars, and so this is the end of it, or at least the last point of exactitude here. And so you can see Mercury at 701 Leo and Mars at 702 Libra. So with this sextile Mercury sextile Mars, it is a verbal aspect. It is about expressing one's opinion and telling the other party what one feels. And it's kind of appropriate that we've just had the summit between Trump and Putin in Anchorage in Alaska, which I think I'll be going into sort of more detail on in my video for Monday, for day Monday. And that is about a frank conversation, people talking about what they genuinely believe, and sort of in the context of Russia and Ukraine, perhaps talking about red lines, how far you are prepared to go, what you are prepared to give up. And so Mercury and Mars can look after itself, and it is verbal. It's not about sort of physical aggression. It's just telling the other party what you believe and being very clear about it. And so do make use of this Mercury sextile Mars over the course of a week. It is exact on Monday, but the beginning of a week, then this Mercury sextile Mars is very much going to be in operation. And so there's something on your mind, something you want to talk about it. And now might be the time to do it. And so that kind of dominates the beginning of a week. There isn't a lot else going on early week. I mean, you could say Monday as well. We've got Sun biquintile Neptune, also on Monday the 18th. So the Sun and Neptune are 144 degrees apart, and it's a biquintile. I like to think of biquintiles as potentially being optional aspects, not aspects we necessarily have to do anything about, but we can if we want. And so you could say that the Sun is who we are, how we express our selfhood, and Neptune is what we're trying to integrate. Neptune can be about moving beyond ourselves. And of course, Neptune has spiritual connotations. So perhaps through our own efforts, we can find something which is beyond us. And that might be religious or spiritual, but there is an effort in it. And when you're talking about spirituality, one often sees it as being something quite natural and spontaneous, but there's not much that's spontaneous about a biquintile. And so perhaps we have to make the effort to transcend. But Neptune is not just about spirituality. It can be about art and doing something that is otherworldly and maybe romantic, and so that's what we can aspire to, and perhaps for our efforts, we can make it happen. And then, there's a hiatus, you could say, that between Monday and Friday, there's nothing hugely important going on. Okay, I briefly perused the aspects going on this week. Maybe I've missed something, but it seems that the next big event is the 22nd, and of course the 22nd, which is a Friday, the last part of the week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that is when the action starts. So on Friday, we've got the sun moving into Virgo. So, the Leo season is, pretty much over. I mean, we've still got Mercury in Leo, but, sun moving into Virgo. And so, that does, change the emphasis. And the important thing, or one of the important things about the sun moving into Virgo is, we have a planet moving into an Earth sign. There's been planets in sort of other elements, but there seems to have been a dearth of Earth. But now that dearth of Earth is over, and of course the sun will stay in Virgo for some time, for a month, and so we become more grounded, we become more realistic, we start to ask ourselves, important questions. What is the value of things? Are things overvalued? Are they undervalued? What do we need to do to give ourselves real security? Can we continue with speculative thinking? These are the kind of questions one might have when the sun moves into Virgo. And there are other things we can say about the sun in Virgo, but when I do the video for Friday, I'll be talking in detail about the sun in Virgo. And then the weekend, sees a new moon on the 23rd, and I think it's the 23rd. And that new moon is, it's 23rd. It's on Saturday the 23rd, and that's an important event. Obviously, the new lunar cycle, and it just takes place, right at the beginning of the sign, which is kind of interesting, because it moves. Because it's right at the beginning of the sign, one has to start to think about the next new moon after that. So this is interesting, because what we have is, this year we have 2 Virgo new moons. So we have a new moon on the 23rd at 0 degrees 23 Virgo. Then we have a new moon on the 21st at 29.5 Virgo. So if you miss this Virgo new moon, you've got another one to look forward to. And this new moon is, of course, square Uranus, and there's a lot to say about it. And of course, this weekend is the anniversary of Ukraine's declaration of independence. It's also the anniversary of the ratification of NATO, and so an important couple of solar returns there. And sun in Virgo. Both NATO and Ukraine have a sun in Virgo, and of course the sun is square Uranus. I won't comment on that any further, but I will comment on it quite considerably in a week's time. And so this leads us into a load of other aspects. Okay, we've got Mercury quintile Uranus on Saturday as well. That's a fairly minor aspect. Then on Sunday, we have got Sun square Uranus, Sun semi-square Jupiter, we've got Sun quincunx Neptune, and we have got Sun quincunx Pluto. And on Saturday, we've got Sun quincunx Saturn. So there's a load of astrological activity over the weekend, and it relates to the sun hitting the outer planets, hitting Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Jupiter by semi-square. So I think that the action next week, over the coming week, is going to be concentrated at the end. So the weekend certainly looks interesting. And yeah, we do have Jupiter semi-square Uranus, and Jupiter semi-square Uranus is just all part of it. And Jupiter semi-square Uranus is the desire for freedom, the desire to break free from something, and we'll have to see how that works out. So it's a rather concentrated week. The beginning of a week is, at least theoretically, just looking at the aspects in the book, not a huge amount going on. But then over the weekend, it does get really hectic. And so now I want to switch to the I Ching, and remember that it is optional. I have to say this every week. You do not have to have the I Ching read if you don't want it read. So if you don't want your I Ching done, you can stop watching the video. This reading only applies to those actually watching the reading. That reminds us that divination, whatever that divination is, it's a voluntary process. You can't have a divination forced upon you. So this reading is going to be divided into 4 sections: a general section, then money, and then career and business, and finally relationships. So I ask the question, what is the week starting on Monday, August the 18th, going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 60, which is limitation. And this has no moving lines. And so there may not be a great deal to be said about it. I mean, limitation, you could say, is fairly self-explanatory. There may be things you want to do. You may have had big ideas about the week ahead, but are you actually going to be able to see it through? You can try, but you don't want to overdo it, and that kind of underlines everything. Don't push it too far, but don't beat yourself up about things, because the I Ching tells us with limitation that we should beware of what it calls is galling limitation. We don't want limitation reaching the point where it just becomes painful. So if you're deciding that you need to go on a diet, or you need to eat less, and it really hurts, you're suffering, then maybe that might not be something you want to do. I understand that it may be absolutely essential for you to go on a diet, and perhaps medically it has to be done, but in a general sort of lifestyle way, you don't cause yourself misery. So limitation has to be about balance and your moderation, and don't force a set of rules and structures upon yourself. It's going to hurt. It's not going to be natural, and at some stage, when you get an opportunity to break free from these restrictions, you're just going to go crazy the other way. So be reasonable about it, and your job in general is to keep things under control, and to get a better understanding of limitation. We don't have any moving lines. The hexagram is locked, so it might be a good idea to look at the nuclear hexagram, the hexagram within the hexagram, which gives us an underlying picture about what this limitation is really about. And so if we knock off the top and the bottom lines, we can see that the hexagram in the middle, or rather the 4 lines in the middle, are, we've got something looking rather like a corner of the mouth, and that is what it is. The nuclear hexagram is hexagram number 27, which is the corners of the mouth. And the corners of the mouth can be about eating. One way of looking at the corners of the mouth is talking about a mouth that has eaten too much. perhaps bulging cheeks. And so in that sense, it might be that this limitation could be about what you eat. And I'm not trying to make you feel guilty or about anything. If you're honest with yourself, maybe you could be eating less of certain things. And there may be a sort of a dietary issue here, but don't forget this reading. It's all about lifestyle. I'm not making any medical comments here, but if you want to go on a diet, a gentle diet, again, I'm not talking about galling limitations where you have to really torture yourself, but it might be a good time if you want to eat less of something, then perhaps now's your chance. And the corners of the mouth is not just about eating. Well, it can also be about smoking. So if you happen to be a smoker, then now might be a time to cut back or give up. There might be galling limitation, but that is the nature of giving up cigarettes or giving up any other form of addictive drug that is not medically prescribed. And we also have to think about what we say, because it's the mouth. What are you talking about? There's always something coming out of one's mouth. And so in general, do be careful about what you say. Be more careful than usual, and don't say more than you have to. Sometimes a very few words can make the point. So don't say more than you have to, and that could tell us something about what limitation is telling you to do, or nothing is telling you to do. But having a modest week, a restrained week, but not a painful week is probably the way to go. And then there is money. Well, it's fairly self-explanatory here. If you have got a limitation, and I'm trying to talk about money, the message is obvious. It's a very usual message. It's a very easy message for me to give, isn't it? I can hardly be shown to be irresponsible or even wrong. Just say, well, don't spend money, but not to the point of being mean. I mean, you can limit your expenditure. You can reduce it. It's not saying you have to cut down all expenditure. Remember, avoid galling limitation that becomes painful. But there are ways in which you can reduce expenditure and reduce commitments, and new and unexpected expenditure should definitely be avoided. So if something comes up and you're thinking, a impulse purchase doesn't have to be done because it's impulse, and so this is about limitation. So do think about what you have, and look at your bank account, look at your investments, and if you look at your investments and your money, if you have any investments, or the money you've got, the cash you've got, however your money is organized, you may see that there are absolute limits to what you have, and you need to work within those limits. And it shouldn't be painful. And you might want to just look at your outgoings, and it's not a time to be generous, but you don't want to be seen to be mean. So you don't want to go in the opposite direction. Excessive generosity is a bad thing, but also excessive meanness. And so you can be generous up to a point, but always up to a point. It's not about feeling guilty about not giving someone money. No, you can make cutbacks, and really it's that simple. And we do get maybe some further information from a nuclear hexagram, the corners of the mouth. This may be indicating that a particular area that you can save money on is shopping for food, because it's the corners of the mouth. The corners of the mouth is about food. And so if you're grocery shopping, ask yourself, is it really necessary? Is it really necessary to go to a restaurant? Is it necessary to splash out on some expensive food item? And the answer is probably no. And by thinking about what you eat, then you might find a way of saving money. And also your own ideas about how you should limit yourself. It's not just about you. It can be what you talk about, because the corners of the mouth is about what you say. And so you can communicate the importance of limitation to other people. So you can give good advice about saving money, not breaking the bank. So it's straightforward. And then we have career and business, and it's just important to keep things on the straight and narrow. It's not a good week for doing anything new or for expanding into new areas. So that would be especially the case if you had your own business, or you were trying to maybe find clients in a new area or take on new types of work. Maybe another time, but perhaps not this week. And so the important thing is to consolidate. And so if you have a job, it's important to consolidate. Don't take on new responsibilities. If you have your own business, it's not a good time to perhaps be taking on new investment. And if you're looking for a job, then be realistic and perhaps limit what you say about yourself. Now, people are supposed to sort of talk themselves up, talk up their many abilities, but you can take it too far, and perhaps that's what limitation is all about. And you also need to communicate the fact that you are responsible and that you understand the importance of limits. And we see the communication aspect of this because the underlying hexagram is the corners of the mouth, and the corners of the mouth is about talking. And so be careful what you say. You don't have to hold things back. You don't have to hurt yourself by limiting things. You just have to be clear and give the impression that you're a safe pair of hands. And if you can do that, then it should be a fairly successful week. And finally, we have relationships. So relationships are there. People can't necessarily be avoided, but we shouldn't be looking for new relationships or expanding existing relationships or feeling we have to get closer to anyone. We have to, see where we are, look at the people around us, and regard that as a fairly fixed situation. We have to be aware that everyone has their limitations. We can have high hopes about what another person can do, what they can do for us, what we can do for them, but it's not a good idea to be over-optimistic. Everyone has their limitations, and we shouldn't allow our expectations to get out of hand, because then we might be disappointed. And certainly relationships should not be taken any further from where they are at the moment. And that doesn't mean that you have to break off relationships or you have to give people the cold shoulder. You're looking for a fairly static situation. And the I Ching also gives you some hints about how to judge people, because the underlying hexagram, the nuclear hexagram of limitation, is the corners of the mouth. And one thing the I Ching says about the corners of the mouth is that you can judge people by what they eat, and that means you judge people by what they enjoy, by what turns them on, what excites them. It needn't be food. It can be money. It can be power. It can be status. Whatever it is, and once you realize what really inspires people, that puts a limit on a relationship. It tells you a lot about the person you're dealing with, but it also tells you what a person can do and what it can't do. And so it might be a very good time to understand people, and that should be the focus rather than getting closer to people. It should be about understanding who they are, what they can do, and what role they can play in your life in the future. And it is very important to be realistic. And that's it. That's all I've got to say. I hope you have a great week, and I also hope you enjoyed this video, or at least you found this video useful. If you did find this video useful, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I would be incredibly grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again very soon.